Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Matthew Perot. I'm the SEO specialist at Jump Crew. And I want to talk to you today about SEO and the importance of website monitoring. So when you're building a website, how to set up tracking for that website in Google Analytics, indexing your website with Google Search Console, and the setup of all of that, and then utilizing Tag Manager to manage all of those different platforms. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into a presentation here. So first, why is this important? I'm sure you already know Google's has the largest market share in today's search market with the 92.4% for 2021. I think it just continues to rise every year. And the importance of having not only your website indexed in Google, but also making recommendations and decisions for the company that you're working for based on the customer's behavior on the site or user's behavior, and how people are getting to your website, whether it be from direct, where they're just clicking in or typing in the URL to the search bar, or they're navigating through Google, or they're getting from an ad to a landing page on your website. It's important, and it's important to determine all of those things, and for the company to put effort and money into certain aspects of not only search engine optimization, but also to developing content to drive more traffic to the website organically, all of those things. So one of the things that we do is we monitor the behavior of people on the website, whether that be how far down they've scrolled on a page, or what they're clicking on a web page once they've gotten there. And those marketing decisions, they're influenced by that customer behavior. So an example of that would be people not scrolling down to a form on the page that's below the fold, or they're not filling out the form, reducing the number of fields in a form to make it more usable, or make it more appeasing to people who are on the website, to moving the form above the fold. All of those kinds of decisions within a business are very important for determining where to put their effort and money into when they're making decisions on their website. So with that, Search Console is the first thing I'd like to talk about. It's a platform used for submitting, indexing, and monitoring your website in Google Search. So this is a place where I'm sure you've heard of your sitemap, which is an XML file, or it could also be an HTML file if you want to put a sitemap link on the footer of your website. But it's mainly focused on impressions, or the number of times your website appears in search engine results pages, the click-through rate, or the percentage of people who click on your website link to the number of impressions that you've gotten, and also the search queries. So what are the actual things that they're searching for when your website appears in search? There are also other things like crawl errors. So there's issues with Google's ability to understand the intent on a page, or maybe it's a slow rendering page and it doesn't load very fast. It'll inform you of that and give you recommendations. It also gives you average position in search engine results pages. So for specific queries or specific pages, you can see there's a drop or there's an increase in traffic, but there's also a change in the position on Google Search, average position in Google Search. So that often influences where money's going to be put within a company, and different changes on the website, whether it be design or content, or internal structural changes to the website. Maybe the URL structure could be changed a little bit. But all of those things are done within Google Search Console. And submitting a sitemap into there, and then allowing the Googlebot to crawl, and then monitoring it after that is the first step, really. Once you've got a website live, you want to make sure it's visible by Google, and that Google understands what's on the website so that it can better index your website. And the second thing is Google Tag Manager. And this is a bit more complex. There are a few different ways to get your website on Google Analytics, one being a GT tag, which is just a a bit of script that you place in the header of your website, and it'll only interact with Google Analytics. Google Tag Manager is a little bit more of a inclusive one where you can manage different tags that could be like potentially you're using Hotjar for heat mapping, for example. And there's a specific bit of code that you can place for Hotjar in the header of your website. And then you would also have other bits of code that would follow that in the head of the website, which would then send data to the aforementioned platform. Google Tag Manager is a place where you can manage all of that and have one piece of code. So that not only allows you a little more flexibility with all of the different platforms that you're using to monitor your website, or per se, you want to track conversions with Google Ads. You can manage all of that within Google Tag Manager, as opposed to having multiple lines of code on the header of your website that then are creating response codes and then slowing down your website slowly. So this not only speeds up things, but also allows you to better manage all of those different tracking parameters or snippets of code in the header of your website once it's already been launched. So just a visualization of how that works. Google Tag Manager that uses three different things. There are tags, which are the container where triggers and variables live. And the triggers are essentially you're indicating to a website or to Google Tag Manager that when this action happens, I want you to send data to this platform. So an example of that might be a button click where you've identified an ID within the element that you want Google Analytics to get an event for, so that you can track the number of conversions or the number of people who are clicking on a button. Another would be a page view, which is the one commonly used for Google Analytics. Anytime that somebody views a page, Google Analytics is informed. Tag Manager sends data to Analytics. So really what it is just a managing platform for all of the different platforms that you might want to use to monitor the website that you've built. And I'm going to go over all of the setup for all of these on a fresh WordPress instance. So just follow me through this, and then I'll switch over to another screen and go through that. And Google Analytics, I'm sure you've already heard of while you've been in school at the Tech Academy, but it provides data about users who visit and interact with your website, their behavior, where they're coming from, the attribution channel they're coming from. So that would be direct or maybe organically. They're seeing your website in organic results and then visiting your website through that, or Google Ads, or maybe a Facebook post, and then they're navigating to your website through that. So that would be a social attribution channel. So it gives a broad view of all of the behavior of people on your website, as well as the way they're interacting with your website and where they're coming from and how they're getting there. And I'm going to provide this deck to Regina and Rich at the Tech Academy, and in a PDF format. And so you can ask them if you'd like, but I've provided a little bit more additional information on Google Analytics, Tag Manager. There's some courses that Google has. They've got an academy where you can actually get free accreditation with Google Analytics, Google Ads, for example, if you want to get involved in that, or Google Search Console. There's another website that I'd like to use if I ever have any questions, because a lot of the work that I do, sometimes I don't know the answer. So I'm constantly looking online or Googling things to determine what is this? How do I fix this? There's a new thing, an algorithm update where they're focusing more on page load speed, things like that. I need to get more information on how to fix these things on a website. I'll go to a lot of different places, but one of them that I found for people who are just getting involved in it is Analytics Mania, and I provided a link for that, as well as one specifically about Google Tag Manager versus Google Analytics and how all of those work. There's a couple of informative videos on there as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and drop this and go to my other page. So here I'm gonna set up I've got a WordPress instance here, and I want to go through this setup of Google indexing your site in Google Search Console, creating tracking within Google Tag Manager for Google Analytics, and then a quick excerpt if you want to see the how to do an event, for example, clicking on a button and then having that show up in Google Analytics as a conversion, or just if you want to know like how many people clicked on this button, this is how you do it. So I've spun up just a quick themed website, demo restaurant website. It's very generic, doesn't have anything of any value really on it. But on the back end of this website, I've got a few things. And if you're familiar with WordPress, there's things called plugins. And I've installed a few plugins here, one being Yoast, which is probably the most commonly used SEO plugin. And that has created a sitemap automatically for me. I can also, manage that, identify which pages I want to be included or excluded for that sitemap. But I've included Yoast. There's a bunch of preloaded plugins on here as well. But another one that I'm using is Insert Headers and Footers. And that's just going to allow me to, without getting into the theme of the website and making adjustments to the theme, I can just get into headers and footers in the settings and install all of the script that I would need in the header of the website, and it would go across all pages. So those are just so you know the plugins that I'm using for this demonstration here, in case you wanted to load those for yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into Google Search Console. So this is the environment that you're looking at. There's properties that you have. You can have multiple properties here. I've got a couple here. I'm going to add another property, and I'm going to use the URL prefix. Adding it with a domain, you would have to get into the domain provider and give Google access to the domain provider, and then that would give Google access to all little pieces of domains and subdomains for that one single domain. But I'm going to do a URL prefix because it's a little bit quicker and cleaner for that setup. So in here, I've got the URL that I'm using for the live site is just a free one. It's real by proxy SEO, WordPress.com, staging.com. I'm going to copy that and place that in the property here. And then I'm going to continue. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, I want to verify your ownership of this website. Otherwise, anyone could just go in here and index any old website that they want. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use an HTML tag. And this is going to go into the head section of right before the body section of your website. It's going to give you this little bit of code, copy that, and then I'm going to go into settings and insert headers and footers where I can insert a script into the header. I'm going to insert that script. I'm going to save. So now that script, if I go ahead and reload this page and I go view page source, I want to see that the back end or all of the stuff in the back end of the website, how all the HTML and CSS works. And I'm going to see it in here somewhere. Where is it? Google Site Verification, right here. So that's going to be there. And then I'm going to go back to Google Search Console, and I'm going to say I want to verify it. It's going to check verification. Ownership's verified. So it's crawled to the website. It's identified that it's the HTML tag is in there. I'm going to go to the property. In here, you've got an environment where you can see the performance of your website. So this might look like, you're going to see the queries that people are using to search for your website. You're going to see the pages that people are visiting through organically through Google. You're going to see the countries they're coming from, the devices they're using, how many times you're appearing in search. So this is where you're going to see the clicks and impressions, your click-through rate in Google search, as well as your average position in Google search. This is really the platform you're using to identify how you're doing within Google specifically, not the traffic that you're getting to your website and user behavior, but how Google is interacting with your website, crawling your website with Googlebot, etc. So now that that's set up, I would have a sitemap, which I'm not going to actually do here, but there's a sitemap that's been set up for this website with Yoast, and it's going to be sitemap index.xml. And there it's going to give a layout. This is XML language where it's easily readable by Googlebot. It's going to identify all of the different pages that we want crawled by Google, and it's going to be the place where Google goes to determine, all right, well, what's on this website right now? Where are the pages? What are things that I want to be crawled? So I would go in here, and if I were going to be indexing this website, I would say sitemap, index.xml. And then I would be submitting that website. And then it would be available for crawling for Google. And Google would crawl through all the pages that I identified in the sitemap, and it would begin indexing those pages and determining where they should rank within Google for particular queries. There's another thing that I'm just going to quickly show you in within the back end of a website if you're utilizing the Yoast SEO, and it's in the tools section of Yoast SEO, and it's going to be under file editor, and it's something called robots.txt. I'm not sure if some of you might be familiar with it, some of you might not be, but it's essentially a file that any bot goes to, and it's going to be given. It's a front door to your website. And you're essentially going to be telling any bot that goes to the website, hey, I want you to crawl these things. I want you to not crawl these subdirectories. That might be like the WordPress admin directory or other things. But you're also going to be identifying the sitemap on here. So I've got there's two that are already on here. I'm probably going to remove these two and have sitemap colon pipe, and then the entire this, and then sitemap underscore index.xml. So this is going to tell bots that are crawling website, hey, I don't want you to crawl WordPress admin. I want you to be able to crawl this. All other things you can crawl through. And hey, by the way, here's my sitemap. Here are all the pages that you can crawl on my website. So it's just been essentially giving you a map of what the content of your site is. So you go in and go ahead and save that, and that's just part of setting up any site with SEO. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into Google Tag Manager, and I'm going to create a new account in Google Tag Manager. And this is where I'm going to manage all of the different tags and platforms that I want reporting data on my website to. So here I'm going to just say, I'll go with by proxy SEO. My website is going to be, I'm just going to say proxy SEO. It's going to be a web because it's for desktop and mobile web pages. You can do this for other apps as well if you want to manage tags with those platforms. But I'm going to go ahead and create that and not read through all of their terms and service, because who does that? And now I've got my environment for my tags where I can manage everything. And this is the bit of script that I was talking about before. This is what's going to live in the header and identify identify for not only your website, but for Google Tag Manager that, hey, somebody's visited my website. It's going to send data to Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is going to manage which amount of data or what kind of data it's going to send to certain platforms that you've created tags for, so that those platforms can then get information about either conversions or user behavior on your website. So I'm going to get in here. I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to jump into the back end of my website again to insert headers and footers. And I'm going to, let's see here, put this code right above that. So that code's going to live in every page in the header of every one of your pages. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to go in and check that that code is in the back end. So I'm going to view source again, and I'm sure you're familiar already with Chrome, but you can inspect a page to look at different elements on a page. You can do all kinds of things within Google Chrome regarding your website and identify different issues with it. You can run commands on it. You can run a Lighthouse speed test on it and generate a report. Download that for PDF. That could be very valuable for both desktop and mobile devices. So there's a lot of different tools within Google Chrome they're already available free, and anyone can use them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to view page source. And I'm going to just make sure that that code is included in here. And I've got the Google Site Verification, and above that, I've got Google Tag Manager right here. So this is this GTM code is the identifiable code that's the ID code for that specific container within Google Tag Manager that you're going to be using. So now that it's installed, I can go back to Google Tag Manager, say OK. Now it's also going to have, if you go into here, it's also going to have this script here. This goes underneath it goes in the body tag of all of your web pages. This isn't actually necessary. Google will tell you it's necessary, but it's not. This is for anyone who's got scripts not running on their browser. So if you don't have anything that's reading the JavaScript on your browser, then this would still be able to fire if there was no script. But that's just never the case. So I never include it on there. It's not really necessary. But here we've got as soon as it loads, we've got a clean sheet. No tags are in here. Nothing's being transmitted. It's just existing right now within your website. The code's in there. Next thing we want to do is we're going to use Google Tag Manager to set up analytics. Google Analytics, this is a US merchant. This is a demo account, analytics account that you would use if you were going into any of those Google Academy courses and you're going to be learning more about Google Analytics. They're going to have you use this merchant, this Google Merchant Analytics that's just a demo dummy account that you're going to use and identify different metrics for their academy. So if you wanted to learn more about this, this is what you'd be using. But what I'm going to do is actually go down to the corner here, little cog, and I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to say, and this is where all the admin stuff lives. I'm going to say I want to create an account. The account name is going to be by Proxy SEO. And Google products and services, I don't really need benchmarking, technical support. I can keep all of those continue to be clicked. Hit next, property name. And this is, so there's an account name, there's a property name, and then there's further down, there's a view name. So these are all they encapsulate each other. So accounts, different properties can live in one account, and then different views can live in a property. So we're going to be naming the property right now by Property Website. You might have another property for your app if you were to utilize an app and want data about that. And so Google has actually come out with what they call GA4, which is Google Analytics 4. It's their newest version of Google Analytics. It's not in beta anymore, but it's still working out the bugs. I don't use it for my clients right now because I don't find that the way that they present information particularly aesthetically appealing for my clients. I like the old Google Analytics version. So the way I set that up is in advanced options and set up a universal analytics property. Yep, I want to do that. And I want to find out what this is my website URL. Where is it? Analytics, there we go. And I'm going to just input that there. Get rid of the HTTPS. And I will just create a Google Analytics property. Now you can create both. It's not going to double up any of your data. It's just going to be two different ways to view information in Google Analytics and user behavior on your site. I'm going to click next. I'm a very small business. I'm one employee, so I'm going to say that. And I want to engage customer measurement, optimize site experience, increase my conversions, and measure lead generation. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. I never read terms of service, so I'm going to accept that. And here is what I was discussing earlier. This is another way to set up Google Analytics on your website. You can place this code in your header, and it will only give data to Google Analytics with this script or with this code. This is just, it's a simple way for a lot of other people to do it. I prefer to use Google Tag Manager because I use a lot of different platforms when I'm monitoring a website, from heat mapping to oftentimes there's also, like I said before, there are Google ad campaigns running or social media campaigns running. And I want to be able to manage all of the conversion tracking within all of those different platforms, but I don't want them all spread out all over the place on the website with different layers of script on the header. Not only does it slow down the website, but it also just kind of can get messy. So it's much easier to manage all of these things in Google Tag Manager and create tags and triggers for those tags to be fired within there. It's just a bit cleaner and it's a bit faster. So we're going to ignore this. But what's important here is the tracking ID. There's a UA number here. Universal Analytics was what it stands for. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Google Tag Manager. I'm going to use that to set up a tag. Now, tags, like I said, are containers for different platforms to use, triggers, or to either I guess what would it be? Identify when a user is doing a specific action that you want to be tracked and you want data to go to a specific platform. So for this trigger, it's going to be my Google Analytics trigger, or Google Analytics tag, rather. I'm going to configure this tag, and it's got a lot of useful, already pre-created tags for a lot of different platforms. There's LinkedIn Insights. So if you're running a LinkedIn campaign and ads within LinkedIn, then you would use this tag, and then you would create triggers to fire when on a page view whenever somebody navigates from LinkedIn ads to your website, and then it can be easily tracked that way. There's all kinds of different platforms here you can use, but what I'm going to use is Google Analytics here. And it's going to ask me what kind of track type I want. I want a page view. You could do an event. That would be for if you wanted a button click, and I could go over that here in a minute, how to set that up. But I'm going to use page view. And then there's another thing called variables. And those are all just the same thing that you would consider variables in code. They're just different empty variables where this is a variable that's going to be my Google Analytics UA code. So this is what I'm going to identify it as, Google Analytics ID. And I'm going to put in that tracking code right there, and I'm going to hit save. So that way, this tag knows I'm going to be using the Google Analytics ID for this tag, and that's where it should be going, to that specific account of Google Analytics. And the trigger is going to be all pages. So anytime a person gets on your website and views a page, this is going to trigger this tag to send information or data to Google Analytics. So I'm going to hit save. And then there's another nifty feature in here called preview, where I can put in my my website URL, and I can connect it. And this is just a staging environment where I can see if a tag's fired or not. And so here it says tags not fired. If this was not firing and it didn't have it wasn't connected to the correct URL, things were missing or wrong, then this wouldn't fire. But this is just fired one time. This is exactly the way I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of this. This looks great. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. I'm going to say I added, and there's different versions in Google Tag Manager, so you can take a step back if you want. You've made a change and you're like, wait, I don't want to do that, and it'll get you back to a different version. But you can always identify and create descriptions for those versions. So it's really useful for regression if you've made any mistakes. Say I've added Google Analytics tag. I'm going to go ahead and publish those. So now there's one tag, the version changes, and I've created a Google Analytics ID. I've also created the tag, and these are the history is the only thing I've ever done here. So this is under versions here, and this I'm going to go back to the workspace. There are different. You can create different triggers here. There are the prefab triggers, which are just page view, and I think 2 others. But and you can create those individually. I'll go over creating one trigger for a button click in a moment. But there's other things called variables, and there's pre-built-in variables that you can configure. It only comes with 5, but if you want, you can go in here and decide I want to track click. I want to be able to track clicks on a click ID or a class of buttons or anything that might have a class and someone's clicked on it. I want to be able to identify that, and I want to possibly utilize these variables. So I'm going to go in and say, you can also, track videos, for example, video percent. If you want to say, if somebody has watched my video 25, 50, 75% of the way through, and I want to create a variable and a trigger for that action on your website and somebody behaving that way, then you can go in and say, I want to track every time somebody gets 50% into my video, and then create an event for that in Google Analytics. That way you can be notified anytime somebody on your website has viewed a video over 50%. So all of those things are useful. Scrolling, all of those things, those are all useful. So I'm going to go ahead and click all of those and have those all available for me for the future. And there, as you can see, 23 workspace changes. I'm going to go ahead and submit that and say I added variables and publish. Now I'm going to go into Google Analytics, and I'm just going to be double checking to make sure that anything that Analytics is picking up traffic on my website. So I'll go back to Analytics over here. I'll go into real time, an overview of real time. So this will tell me that I'm on my website right now. I'm looking at it, and here I've shown up. I'm in Portland. I'm the only person on this website right now. If one of you jumped on that website, it would probably say there's another person on the website, and it would identify as either a desktop or mobile or tablet. Lots of useful information. But this is just real time what's going on, and this is telling me that it's actually working right now. So Google Analytics is set up correctly with Google Tag Manager, and it's sending data to Analytics. The next thing I'm going to show you real quickly is just creating an event within Google Tag Manager, so you know when somebody has clicked on a button. And the way you do that in Google Tag Manager, well, actually first, I'm going to jump in here, and I'm going to go to my page, my demo restaurant page. And I've just got this in Gutenberg, which is the basically just the way you code within the backend of WordPress, and it's what they call a theme. But let's see here, view our menu. I want to track this button here, but I want to edit it as HTML, and I see here there's a class WordPress block button, but there's no ID. But I only want to look at this one button. If I wanted to identify a class, which I could track classes for button clicks. If there's multiple buttons within a website, you want to just say, I want to track this class. They all have the same class. Then it would track all of those different buttons on your website. But I want to track just this specific button. So I'm going to go ID, and I'm going to go menu button. And I'm just going to add that little HTML in there. And I'm going to hit update. And quickly make sure that that button has that ID in there. So I'm going to go inspect, And as I see here, ID, menu button. Great. So now that ID is in that menu button, I can go into, well, actually, first I'm going to make sure that I have that. I'm just going to copy this really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that menu button so I have that ID correct. Then I'm going to go back into tags. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to say this is my menu button tag. This is going to be a universal analytics property. And like I said before with Google Analytics, when I was setting that up, it's just a page view. But now I want to set up an event. I want to say this is a category of button click. The action is menu. And label, I'm going to say it came from this page path. So that's going to give everything post, the domain, all of the subdirectories after that. And it's going to basically identify if you've got multiple, say you had identified a class rather than an ID, and that button existed in multiple areas and multiple pages on your website. This would be just, well, which page did it actually come from? Which page did that button click come from if you were to be doing that? So I'm just going to identify it as page path. It's going to be action menu, and it's going to be button click. So I'm also going to make sure that it's going to Google Analytics ID because it's a variable that I've already created. I can identify what the analytics setting is and hit that. The triggering is going to be new. So right now I don't ever use those. I don't know what they are, but all pages is just page view. Anytime somebody views a page, I'm going to create another one, and it's going to be my menu button. And here I've got trigger types. So there's all kinds of page views, DOM ready. There's element visibility, scroll depth. You can say anytime somebody scrolls 50% down my page or past this certain place, I want you to inform me of this. There's an event you can create for that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go all elements. And I'm going to say, instead of all clicks, I want some clicks. And not the class, but a click ID.
Here's something I found on the web. According to flyleaf.com.
Uh-oh. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. I don't know when I said Alexa. So I've got click ID here, and it's going to be equal to the menu button. So I'm going to hit save. Now I've got my tag with my trigger. It knows now when this tag is going to be triggered. It's got all of my variables with Google Analytics ID. I've got events here set up. So this is all going to show up in Google Analytics and be able to identify what this actual event is. And now I'm going to hit save. And if I go into preview again, I can see if this tag is firing. Go back into the same home page where I was before. Here it is. And you see the Google Analytics tag is fired, but my menu button tag has not fired yet. And that's because I haven't clicked on that button. The trigger hasn't been fired yet. So if I go down to view our menu, I clicked on that, my menu button tag is fired. And since we're in preview mode, it's not going to push anything to analytics just yet. So I'll go ahead and try this and make sure I'll submit first, make sure it's live. Button click. And I've published that. I've got two tags, menu button or trigger, and then menu button tag. I've seen that's there. I'm going to go back to my workspace, and then I'm going to go to my demo restaurant, my actual live page. I'm going to reload that page, and then I'm going to view our menu, get that click in there. And in here, under real-time events, you've seen a button click, event action is menu. And so now my event's working. This is now one button click on my website. I've identified when I want that tag to trigger. Now Google Analytics knows, and I can now report to my client or the company that I'm working for that owns the website, hey, you've gotten a button click from a user. And furthermore, if you wanted to get deeper into say the acquisition. So where did that person come from when they clicked that button? You can get into different segments and say, I want to know only about direct traffic. I want to know only about paid traffic or organic traffic. You can click on organic traffic, and that way you'd only be identifying data that comes from Google Analytics or Google search result pages. So that's a real quick crash course on how to set up your Google Tag Manager analytics, get events set up for a button click. It could be many other things too, like I said, and also indexing your website with Google Search Console. And I'm going to open up to questions if people want to either type in their questions or if they want to go ahead and turn on their microphone and ask a question.
That's a great presentation, Matthew. With the and I didn't realize there was so much to the Google Analytics. It's pretty amazing how much there is. Do you work in any like YouTube video optimization?
Currently, I don't. I have created tags and events and triggers to fire when videos are being either viewed or somebody's clicked play or they've gotten to a certain time in that video. There's been one of my clients that they had a video, but then there's another guest that came onto the video like 35 seconds into the video, and they wanted to know how many people got to that 35-second mark. And I've created an event for that, and then we were able to track, how many people actually got to that point. But not currently, no. Most of the clients that I work with are either service-based. There's one SaaS company. There's products as well. Beauty Blender is one of them. I'm not. Some might know of them, but yeah, not too many videos. I just haven't gotten too much into it. I know how to do it, but not too much right now.
Gotcha. And can you talk a little bit about what your typical day is like and what it's like with getting assigned like different websites? Are you working with like, 5 websites a week, or you send, 5 a day, that kind of thing?
So currently I have 8 clients. My previous job, I had 30 clients for SEO and another 20 to 25 for Google Ads campaigns that I was running. But currently I have 8, and typically I will have between 2 and 5 meetings a day, both internally and with clients. I'll be sometimes creating recommendations for other web developers that are on their team for different things that need to be done or errors that I see within their website. So, for example, it might be some broken links on the back end of their website. I got a lot of 404s. One tool I use a lot is Screaming Frog SEO Spider, and that just crawls an entire website or domain and breaks everything down. So these are all your meta descriptions. Are there any duplicates? Are there multiples? Here are all your site titles, H1 tags, H2 tags. Here are all the response codes. So I'll be going into those and determining like, okay, what kind of opportunities are there for optimization? And sometimes I'll be going into the website, depending on the client, whether or not they have a dev team or not. I'll be going into their development environment and making those adjustments myself. Sometimes I'll be communicating directly with the client. I would say, okay, so for the first bit of my day, first like 2 hours is probably answering emails, clients to internal team members, discussing different, like, for example, we've got some of our clients have content packages where they've got blogs. We've got writers within our team, and those writers are looking to identify different keywords for a particular topic that they're writing about. So I'll get into SEMrush, which is another platform I use for search engine optimization, and I'll identify different keywords that have a high volume but a low keyword difficulty, and say, hey, you should utilize these keywords. Or maybe I'll get into Google Search Console and I'll say, hey, these, if they want ideas for content, I'll see some pages that that are just on the cusp of being on page one. Maybe they're on the top of page two, and I'll identify those pages, and then I'll see what things they're currently being searched for. I'll plug those into SEMrush, and I'll see if there's any keywords or queries that might be opportunities for us to utilize in some of the content that we develop. Really, when it comes to SEO, content is king and key for everything. When Googlebot's running a crawl through the website, is trying to identify the intent of the content, whether or not it's useful for people, and then it's identifying where it should be ranked for and what keywords it should rank for. So I'm sometimes looking for unique kind of keyword strings. They could be long tail keywords or short tail keywords or short keywords. But I'm identifying different opportunities where there might be a gap in the current search indexing and the current search results pages where we can maybe sneak into page one. So some of that would be keyword research. Recently, with Google's algorithm update in May, they're focusing on what they call core web vitals. And that would be, they've got something called layout content shift, where when you're loading a website up and say a button is in the center of your page, but then it moves because other content's loading, images are loading, things like that, but that's moved around a little bit. That provides a poor user experience because somebody could be clicking on that and then mistakenly click on something else. So Google identifies those things in Google Search Console, and I might go in and say, hey, let's get a caching plugin for this website so that we can speed up some of the load times and we don't have those problems with the core web vitals. Or inserting internal links, doing backlink building. That's really important as well. Getting links from other high authority domain websites that are pointing towards my client's website. That improves their value to Google. Google looks at that favorably. So it could be many different things. Sometimes I'll just be presenting data on conversions and the number of products sold or the revenue that's generated from a website, and then all of the different attribution channels. So, hey, you've made 34,000 from social media this month. And that's a decrease of 2% over last month. Or organic traffic has seen a large increase, and it's due to this specific page that you just published last month. This is maybe an opportunity in the future to produce more content like that revolves around this. So it's really just looking for opportunities, mainly within my work in SEO.
No, I think it's awesome the way you've really grabbed the bull by the horns and really became an expert SEO person or SEO professional after graduating. It's pretty amazing all the knowledge that you have now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do starting from web development. I think I was saying before that not a lot of SEO specialists actually have web development experience or familiar with the environments, whether it be WordPress or other environments in web development. So that's been very helpful. And to be honest with you, SEO is not that difficult. It's the web development part of it is actually difficult, but having that as a boilerplate knowledge to then just be able to discuss websites and be informed about them has been hugely helpful, because a lot of people did go from marketing into search engine optimization without the awareness of the dev environments, and it's a much more difficult process for them. So I think having that web development knowledge already, it's helped. I mean, it's put me in a great position in my career. So not a lot of other SEO specialists have that.
No, that's awesome. What would you recommend? And I don't want to take all the questions here, but what would you recommend for somebody going through our program and they decide they want to do some contracting and build websites, for small businesses, that kind of thing? What would you recommend they have kind of as a minimum with SEO when they build out their websites?
I think really just what I discussed today would be a great place to start. I mean, being able to not only build the website, but also make it visible and indexable to Google without having that, your website's just kind of dead in the water. It exists. It has a domain. You can go visit if you type it in the domain into the search bar, but having it available for Google and search results, which is the way most people find information anymore, is hugely valuable once you've already built the websites. And really, you got to get into the dev environment to insert that script to begin tracking all of those parameters within Google Analytics, anyways. So really, what I've just gone through today, I thought this would be this is a great thing to know if you're a web developer starting out, that you can say, hey, once I've built your website, I can also get you set up with Google and get you in a position where you can be found in search results. And also I can track different aspects of the behavior of users on your website. And I can provide you with the information and data that comes from that. And that'll drive different changes, the way, where funds are allocated within that company to design changes on the website, all of those things. So that's hugely helpful. I think just being able to set up all of these things, have the data available for your client or for the company that you're working for is hugely valuable. Just the basic setup, really. I mean, any of the other optimization stuff that can come later, but just having the information first and foremost is hugely important.
Yeah, it definitely is. And what is it like when you get a client's page ranked number 1?
Well, it feels great. And oftentimes I'm trying to there's something called branded and non-branded keywords. And so if it's branded, that's great. That's what it should be anyways. But if it's non-branded, it may be service-based. Say I've got a website that is dealing with getting a credit card. I mean, super high volume, really, really high, very difficult thing to get in page 1 with. But if they have a non-branded search, so like, how do I consolidate all of my credit card debt, and their blog post or their page comes to the top, then that's really, I mean, that's the sweetest deal there, is getting somebody up there for a non-branded search. So yeah, that does feel great. It's great to have a meeting with a client and go, hey, the thing that I've been working on for the last 2 months, we got it. Now we got to maintain it, because other competitors are getting after it too. So let's create some more content revolving around this. Let's, make sure that we optimize the user experience on this page, and get people to convert while they're here. That does feel great.
Yeah, really cool. I can imagine.
Yeah, Frank.
Right.
Hey, I was wondering, what's the leap from like WordPress to other sites to get Google to work with it? Like to do the Google Analytics. WordPress is a great place to start, would you say? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then get the feel of it. I was just wondering, your customers, what frameworks is there a predominance of frameworks they use?
Most of my customers use WordPress. There are a few that use Shopify. And I would say that Shopify is an environment that's very difficult to work with. I think that it's as if Mattel tried to create a content management system. It's just so bubbly and unuseful. But I think WordPress is the most commonly used one. I think it's still the most widely used CMS platform in the world. It really, and setting everything up is really identical. It's just the environment that you're working within. If you can identify, where do I inject this script into the header where it will exist on all pages, that's really just it based on the environment that you're working in. Otherwise, everything else works the same. I mean, HTML is all the same, CSS is all the same. So really, it's going to be very similar. But I would say WordPress is a great place to start. And I don't know if Tech Academy is offering PHP courses, but I don't know PHP. I just know how to get into the environment and do things. Yeah, Tyler?
Yeah, hey, first of all, thanks for doing this. And thank you, Frank, for asking that question. That was also a question I had. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about backlinking. I know that's super important with SEO. I don't expect you to give me all your secret sauce and trade secrets, but I guess I'm just kind of asking if there's like a basic strategy for setting up those relationships, or kind of how that works. Is it sort of like a one-to-one trade? Like I'll link you on mine, you link me on yours, sort of a thing? Like just, any general advice on backlinking?
Well, from an aspect from the Google's perspective, when looking at backlinking, to keep it white hat, there needs to be no exchange of services. So, you're not like paying people for backlinks. That Google will, oftentimes they'll see that kind of behavior and they'll be like, oh, you're blacklisted. I'm going to remove these page from indexing. So white hat backlink building is really the way to go. Without getting penalized by Google. To be completely frank with you, I always outsource backlinking as almost a rule. That just takes a lot of time. There's companies that just strictly do that, and they've got they have crawlers that they've built to identify different blogs and different other websites that are affiliated to the different keyword groups that you're looking for. And then identify what their own domain authority is, and then ask for those backlinks to your website. Sometimes it's good to reach out if you've done searches on a specific category of keywords that you're associated with, your website's associated with, and somebody has mentioned say your business or your client's business within their content. Sending off an email to their marketing team, or I don't know exactly how to get a hold of some of those people internally. It's kind of tough. But if you're being mentioned in someone else's site, asking for a backlink is really usually not too difficult to do. But to be real frank with you, I always outsource it. I have too many other things to do, and it is time consuming. It's probably one of the biggest cruxes in web development. It's a huge rub with SEO because it just takes so much time. It's super valuable. I know it really helps your page authority and your domain authority, but it's just something that I always try to outsource, to be honest. I wish I had a better answer for you, but definitely white hat, no exchange of services or paid backlinking is always the way to go, because Google will identify that and penalize you.
Gotcha. One more follow-up on that. Like, these backlinks, are they actual links on a page that someone can click, or is it something like in the metadata, like on the back end that no one sees? Like, I guess conceptually, how does the backlinking work?
I think it's always got to be something that someone sees that's within visible in HTML. So Google will crawl it, identify that your domain exists on the content of their site, and they'll follow that link to your site, identify that, hey, you've been referenced here, and hopefully they're not using a no follow. There's a certain part of a link, an anchor tag, when you can identify this link as a no follow link, which tells bots, don't follow this link when you're going to the website. So if you can ask for follow links or just not the no follow links, then that obviously provides a lot more benefit to your domain when asking for those.
Cool. I appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if
Awesome.
you do come up with some questions, here's Matthew's LinkedIn. You can definitely reach out and ask your questions. Also, next week, we have another Tech Talk as usual. We actually have Alexandra Bay, who's going to talk about quality assurance and software development. If you're interested, here's the link to that. And if you want to learn more about the Tech Academy, here is our school website. But other than that, thank you so much, Matthew, for doing this presentation. And if you're interested in watching it later, we actually recorded it. And that is going to be on our Tech Talk playlist. Again, all my links like usual. Here it is. Oops. There we go. All right. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone joining, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate you sticking around.
Matthew, that was a great presentation.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks
Again,
everyone.
Matthew.
Appreciate you. All right. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.